She expected the negotiator to kill her, but what he did was astonishing. Nira's slender fingers shook as she fumbled with the alien controls, the battered vessel shuddering beneath her. Warning glyphs pulsed violet along her forearms and across the luminescent blue skin of her cheeks. The swirling dark purple markings, always a comfort in their familiar symmetry, now glowed with a feverish urgency that set her nerves jangling. On the cracked display, the guidance system flickered once, a last stuttering gasp, then went dark. The ship listed violently as stabilizers failed, metal screeching beneath her feet. Nira's lips drew tight as she overrode the dying AI, gripping the manual yoke with trembling hands. Outside, clouds tore past in ragged streaks, the planet's atmosphere swirling in unnatural colors. Below, a dense forest loomed, treetops rippling like an alien sea. With each lurch of the vessel, her vision blurred. She forced herself to focus, steering desperately for the thickest patch of trees, anything to slow her descent. The hull groaned, an agony of metal on metal. A side panel wrenched free, vanishing into the churning wind. Alarms screamed inside her skull. There was no time to pray, no time to regret. The trees rushed up with impossible speed. Impact came as a bone-jarring eruption. Metal shrieked, glass exploded, and pain shot through her body in blinding waves. The world fragmented. Darkness folded in, sudden and absolute. When consciousness returned, it arrived in broken pieces. Nira's thoughts moved sluggishly, as if wading through oil. The coppery tang of blood filled her mouth, mingling with the acrid scent of scorched wiring. She blinked, vision swimming. Wreckage pressed down on her, trapping her in a twisted cocoon of fractured panels and torn fabric. Her suit was shredded along her side, pale blue blood oozing steadily from a ragged wound. Her neural interface blinked urgent orange, multiple fractures, toxins flooding her system, a dislocated joint in her shoulder. She tried to move, but her body screamed in protest. There was no sign of any Lurian outpost, no beacons, no familiar signals, only the wind hissing through splintered hull plating and the distant cawing of alien birds. Survival was all that mattered now. A branch cracked outside the wreckage. Nira's senses snapped alert. Crunching footsteps drew closer, slow and deliberate. She sucked in a breath, forcing herself to stillness. Her training took over. Evade capture, protect Lurian technology, trust no one. She reached for her sidearm, fingertips brushing empty holster. Gone. The hatch groaned, hinges protesting, as it creaked open. Sunlight sliced the dimness, painting sharp lines across the tangled wreck. A tall human man stepped into the threshold, ducking beneath a spar, the light framing him in gold. His voice was careful, cautious. "Is anyone alive in there?" Nira pressed herself against the debris, silent, every muscle tense with readiness. The man stepped further inside, eyes adjusting to the gloom. He stopped short, staring at the glow of her skin, the star-flecked tendrils that spilled from her head in a shimmering cascade. "Whoa," he breathed, his gaze flicking over her injuries, the alien technology, the dark stains of her blood. Nira bared her teeth, the swirling marks along her arms and cheeks pulsing with warning. "Don't come any closer," she hissed in halting English. The man raised his hands, palms outward in a gesture of peace, startled by her words. "I'm not here to hurt you. You're hurt. Let me help." She laughed, sharp, bitter, edged with pain. "I know what humans do to outsiders." Confusion crumpled his brow. "Outsiders? I don't even know what you are. My name's Ethan Calloway. I'm a negotiator, not a soldier." He crouched, studying the beam that pinned her legs. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, but his eyes held steady. "This will hurt, but we have to move before this thing goes up. Can you help me?" Nira hesitated, searching his face for deception. The ache in her side sharpened, and her vision fuzzed at the edges. With no other choice, she nodded, Jaw clenched, Ethan braced himself and gripped the beam. "On three," he said quietly. "One, two." He heaved. The metal shifted with a scream, tearing away from her flesh. Nira bit down on a cry, dragging herself free with the last of her strength. The moment her legs cleared the wreckage, agony lanced through her hip. Her arms buckled. Ethan caught her before she hit the deck, his arms strong and unexpectedly gentle. She could feel his heartbeat, thundering against her own battered chest. The warmth of his skin was jarring, human, unfamiliar. The crash site groaned. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, eyes wide. "We have to move, now." He lifted her, ignoring her feeble protests, and half carried, half dragged her out into the sunlight. They were barely clear of the wreck when the world exploded behind them, a roaring fireball that sent debris raining through the trees. Ethan threw himself over her, shielding her body with his own, as metal scraps and burning leaves pelted his back. The force of the blast rattled her bones, but his presence held her steady. For a moment, everything was silent, except the ringing in her ears. Nira blinked, dazed, as Ethan shifted and pulled her upright, cradling her as if she weighed nothing at all. She braced herself for interrogation, for rough hands and cold demands, but instead, he simply asked, "Can you walk?" She shook her head, too dizzy to speak. Without hesitation, Ethan bent and lifted her into his arms, his jaw set with quiet resolve. He carried her through the undergrowth, branches whipping at his shoulders, boots crunching softly over moss and roots. Each step jostled her wounds, but the pain was a distant echo compared to her confusion. They reached a small, weathered cottage nestled among the trees, a lonely outpost in the wilderness. Ethan kicked the door open and carried her inside, laying her gently on a battered cot near the hearth. The air was tinged with wood smoke and wildflowers. He moved quickly, hands sure as he fetched a battered medkit, dabbing antiseptic over her wounds, binding her ribs with careful, practiced fingers. Nira watched him, suspicion gnawing at her exhaustion. Why help her? Why not call for backup or turn her in for a reward? She flinched as he examined the tear in her side, but he worked in silence, only glancing at her with occasional concern. "I'm here to build understanding, not destroy it," he said softly, as if sensing her thoughts. "And I don't want to be the reason for a war." The honesty in his voice unsettled her more than any weapon could. She searched his face, hunting for a glint of deception, a shadow of malice, but found only open sincerity. He finished the bandages, then rummaged in a chest for a faded shirt, offering it to her with a small, awkward smile. "It's clean, warmer than what's left of your suit." Nira accepted it warily, fingers brushing his for the briefest moment, startled by the spark of contact. He turned away, busying himself with the kettle. She pulled the shirt over her battered frame, the fabric oddly comforting. Ethan nodded toward the door. "You should rest." "I'll keep watch." Suspicion lingered. "You're not going to restrain me?" she demanded. He looked back, a gentle challenge in his eyes. "Would it make a difference?" Nira stared at him, too tired to answer, her thoughts tangling with confusion and pain. She watched him for a long moment, then let her eyelids drift shut, surrendering at last to exhaustion. As sleep claimed her, one thought echoed through her mind. Why did Ethan Calloway not match anything she'd learned about humanity? Morning brought a gentle golden glow, filtering through the warped glass of the cottage windows. Nira blinked awake, the unfamiliar hush of this world pressing in from all sides. The aches in her body had faded to a dull throb, her wounds bound tight, and the swirling markings on her skin subdued, alive with only a faint glimmer of energy beneath the surface. She lay still, listening to the low, persistent hum of unfamiliar devices from the next room, their pitches strangely comforting in their steadiness. The scent of something herbal hung in the air. Nira eased herself up, careful not to tug at the bandages on her side. Her bare feet touched the creaking wood of the floor as she padded silently toward the source of the noise. In the main room, Ethan sat at a battered table, hunched over the gutted remains of her shattered navigation core. Its crystalline circuitry spilled across the table, surrounded by a scatter of tools and a coil of wire that looked distinctly human. Ethan's movements were deft, his brow furrowed in concentration as he rotated a luminous fragment in the morning light. "You should be resting," he said without looking up, voice mild but not unkind. Nira hovered by the doorway, wary. Her gaze darted to the navigation core, its iridescent surface fractured beyond repair. "Why are you touching that?" she demanded, her words sharper than she intended. He set the crystal gently on a cloth. "Curiosity, mostly," he admitted, glancing up at her. "I have some background in advanced engineering. Not like your level, obviously, but enough to recognize how different this is. The way your core interfaces with—" He hesitated, as if unsure how much to say. "It's beautiful. I promise I haven't damaged anything." Nira wrapped her arms across her chest, tension settling between her shoulders. "Lurian technology isn't meant for human hands. Trust me, I know." Ethan offered her a small, chipped mug. Steam curled from it, carrying the scent of earth and mint. "Tea? You look like you need it." She eyed the drink as if it might be a trap, then accepted it with stiff fingers, the warmth seeping into her palms. "What is it?" she asked, sniffing. "Lemon balm and wild mint. Grew them myself," he said, smiling. "Best thing I have for shock, and you've had more than your share." She sipped cautiously. The flavors were sharp and unfamiliar, but comforting. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was not quite companionable, but it wasn't hostile either. Ethan set aside his tools, folding his hands on the table. "So, you were observing Earth, for your people." Nira tensed, every instinct urging her to deflect, to retreat behind coded phrases and silence. But his tone was gentle, his posture open. She weighed the risk and answered, "For the Lurian Assembly, yes, we monitor developing worlds. Yours is progressing rapidly." He considered that, nodding slowly. "Some would call it progress. Others would say we're just making bigger mistakes, faster." His gaze drifted to the navigation core. "Were you alone? Or are there others like you nearby?" "Just me," she said, voice tight. "Scouts travel alone. Less chance of detection." "And the crash?" She hesitated, then gave a clipped nod. "Atmospheric anomaly. The guidance system failed. I lost the gravitic regulator during descent." She glanced at the broken device. "Without it, none of this can be repaired." He leaned back, studying her. "Your people, do they see us as a threat?" "We see you as unpredictable," Nira replied. "Your technology changes you, fast. Sometimes you leap forward in ways that are hard to anticipate. The Assembly doesn't trust what it can't predict." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, considering her words. "That's fair. We don't trust ourselves half the time." A faint smile ghosted across his lips. Before Nira could respond, the rumble of an engine sounded in the distance, muffled by the trees. She stiffened, heart hammering. Ethan's face shifted instantly from curiosity to caution. "Stay here," he whispered, rising and moving to the window. He peered out, then relaxed slightly. "Just the weekly supply drop. Stay out of sight, though." Nira slipped into the shadows behind a curtain, crouching low. A battered van pulled up outside, its engine coughing before dying. The delivery man, a burly figure in a faded cap, ambled to the door, a cardboard box tucked under one arm. Ethan met him on the porch. "Mornin', Ethan," the man called. "Morning, Dave. Thanks for bringing it out this far." "No problem. Looks like you're stocked up for a while. Got any more of those wild berry jams?" Dave's voice was easy, the conversation mundane. Ethan chuckled. "Check the crate next week. I'll see what I can do." With a wave, Dave headed back to his van. The engine sputtered to life and faded into the trees. Nira waited until Ethan closed the door before slipping out from her hiding place, exhaling a shaky breath. "Was that normal?" she asked. "About as normal as it gets," Ethan said, setting the box on the table. "He doesn't ask questions. It's why I keep him around." Nira joined him, curiosity pricking at her despite herself. Together, they turned their attention to the ruined navigation core. She explained the function of the gravitic regulator, tracing the empty socket where it should have slotted in. "Without it, the entire system is inert," she said, frustration edging her words. "Even if you could reconstruct the matrix, it wouldn't ignite." Ethan examined the core, his brow furrowed. "It's not impossible. If we find the regulator, I might be able to help you repair this. I've always been good at puzzles." She glanced at him, searching for the catch. "Why help me?" He shrugged, offering a crooked smile. "Because you need it, and maybe because I want to see if it's possible." Nira said nothing, but something eased inside her. The suspicion that had clung to her since the crash receded a fraction, replaced by a reluctant hope. As dusk settled, Ethan busied himself at the stove, preparing a meal from the supplies Dave had brought. The aroma of frying bread and simmering vegetables filled the small cottage. Nira hovered awkwardly, uncertain whether to offer help. She watched Ethan's hands as he chopped and stirred, the rhythm of his movements soothing. He set the table for two, pushing a plate toward her. "It's nothing fancy. Local root stew and bread." She eyed the food warily. The bread was soft and pale, unfamiliar. Ethan picked up a slice, slathering it with butter. "Like this," he demonstrated, then took a bite, smiling at her confusion. Nira mimicked him, tentatively spreading butter across her bread. The taste was rich, the texture strange but pleasant. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of cutlery and the distant call of birds outside. "Do you miss your home?" Ethan asked quietly. Nira hesitated. "We're not meant to grow attached. Lurians are raised for purpose, attachment clouds judgment. But you're here now, on your own." He watched her, interest genuine. "Doesn't that get lonely?" She looked away, unsure how to answer. "Solitude is safer, for us and for the worlds we observe." He nodded, accepting her words without pressing. Their conversation drifted, the tension easing with each exchanged glance. Nira found herself watching Ethan's hands, the way he gestured when he spoke, the way he cradled his mug, the way his fingers brushed crumbs from the table. His smile was quick, almost shy when she asked questions about the food or the cottage. Ethan, for his part, seemed equally fascinated. His gaze lingered on the star-tipped tendrils that framed her face, the shifting silver of her irises as they caught the lamplight. "I've never met anyone like you," he admitted softly. She felt heat rise in her cheeks, uncertain whether it was embarrassment or something else entirely. "You're not like the humans I was taught about," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He laughed, low and warm. "Most of us aren't, I hope." They finished the meal in quiet, a fragile sense of peace stretching between them like a bridge over dark water. Later, as the fire died down, they sat together at the small table, a map spread between them. Ethan traced a path from the cottage to the likely crash site. "We'll need to start at first light," he said, "before anyone else decides to poke around." Nira nodded, already calculating the risks and possible escape routes. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the dinner table, to the easy way Ethan had smiled at her, the patient way he'd explained each dish, the gentle warmth in his voice. When night finally claimed the cottage, Nira lay on her cot, the faded shirt soft against her skin. Sleep came slowly. Her mind returned, again and again, to Ethan Calloway, his contradictions, his quiet strength, the way he looked at her as if she were something wondrous instead of something dangerous. Something stirred within her, something she had always been taught to suppress. She let herself feel it, just for a moment, before exhaustion pulled her under, leaving her dreams tangled with the memory of Ethan's kindness. Mist clung to the forest floor, curling in ghostly ribbons around Nira's boots as she followed Ethan through the undergrowth. Each step sent a fresh ache rippling through her side, but she kept moving, driven by necessity and the steady warmth of Ethan's presence just ahead. He paused often, offering her a hand over tangled roots and slick moss, his eyes always searching the fog for threats neither of them could fully name. They left the cottage behind in the pearly half-light of dawn, shadows stretching long and uncertain beneath the trees. Nira moved slowly, her injuries still raw, but she refused to complain. Ethan glanced back every so often, his mouth twitching in concern. "If you need to rest," he began. "I can manage," Nira cut in, breathless but stubborn. "We should reach the wreck before the mist burns off." He nodded, accepting her resolve, and slowed his pace just enough for her to keep up. As they walked, he began to talk, his voice quiet but clear in the hush of the woods. "I used to travel a lot for work," he said. "Peace talks, mediations, always moving between crises. The idea was to keep small conflicts from turning into wars. Sometimes it worked." She listened, curiosity prickling. Why stop? He hesitated, stepping over a fallen branch. Too many failures. Too many times when words weren't enough. After a while, you start counting the losses instead of the victories. His gaze softened, distant. "I thought maybe I could do more good by stepping away, letting someone less tired take over." Nira considered this, studying the lines around his eyes. "You're helping me, even though I'm not one of you." Ethan smiled, a little sad. "Maybe we're not so different after all." He brushed his hand against hers, a fleeting contact, before moving forward again. They reached the clearing where her vessel had fallen. The wreckage sprawled across the ground, torn metal glinting beneath the heavy mist. The crash had gouged a path through the trees, splintered trunks and scorched earth marking its violent arrival. Nira's breath caught. There was something mournful in the silence here, a sense of something precious lost. She moved closer, Ethan beside her. They began to scavenge, picking through charred panels and tangled wiring. Nira's fingers shook as she sifted through the debris, her markings pulsing faintly with tension. She found the gravitic regulator half buried under a wing, its casing scorched but intact. Relief pulsed through her. "Found it," she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her, brushing dirt from the device. "Will it work?" "Maybe, if the core isn't too damaged." She tucked it carefully into her pack. A glint caught her eye, her comms relay, wedged under a twisted support strut. She reached for it, hands trembling. The surface flickered to life, a weak blue pulse chasing across its face. Nira stared at the signal, dread and hope warring inside her. Ethan saw her expression. "That's how you contact your people?" She nodded. "It's a distress beacon. A rescue team will come soon." He straightened, all traces of fatigue gone. His diplomat's poise slipped back into place, his voice low but urgent. "Nira, I need you to be honest with me now. What happens when they get here? Are you under orders to report everything you've learned?" She met his gaze, unable to look away. "Yes." "I'm a scout, Ethan. My duty is to observe, to assess risk. The Assembly sent me because they don't trust unpredictable worlds. They don't trust humans. I was supposed to be invisible, nothing more than data." She swallowed hard. "But I failed. You found me." Ethan's jaw tensed. "What will your people do when they find out you've had contact? That you've—" He broke off, his frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "You could lie. Leave me out of your report." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "I can't. My neural interface records everything. Even if I wanted to." She trailed off, uncertain how to finish. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy, thick with things unsaid. Suddenly, the low thrum of an engine vibrated through the mist, a harsh mechanical growl that grew steadily louder. Ethan's eyes widened. He scanned the treetops, then grabbed Nira's hand, pulling her toward a fallen pine just beyond the main impact crater. "Come on, down," he hissed. They dove beneath the broad trunk, the damp earth cold against their bodies. Ethan pressed close, his arms wrapped tight around her, his breath warm on her cheek. Nira's heart pounded, her senses on high alert. Above them, the helicopter's rotors whipped the mist into a frenzy, scattering leaves and debris. She buried her face in Ethan's shoulder, forcing herself to be still. The helicopter passed overhead, searchlight sweeping the ground. Its presence was like a blade against her skin, danger and discovery lurking in every heartbeat. Ethan held her tighter, as if his embrace alone could shield her from the world above. For a moment, fear blurred with something deeper. Nira became acutely aware of Ethan's body against hers, the steady drum of his heart, the heat radiating from his skin. His hand slid down her arm, fingers pausing at the swirling marks that glowed faintly even in the gloom. "They're incredible," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the thrum of the blades. Nira shivered as his fingertips traced the lines. "They're sensory," she murmured. "They respond to emotion. They're connected to how I feel." Their faces were close, eyes searching. The world narrowed to the space between them, charged with possibility and dread. For a breathless second, Nira thought he might kiss her. Then her comms relay buzzed sharply, a signal pulsing against her palm. The moment shattered. Ethan pulled back, reality settling between them like a wall. The helicopter veered away, its searchlight fading into the distance, but the spell was broken. "They're coming," Nira said quietly, her voice hollow. She pushed herself up, cradling the relay in her hands, the blue light casting eerie patterns across her skin. Ethan knelt beside her, his expression caught between longing and resignation. The mist thickened, closing around them as the distant sound of rotors faded. Nira's markings glimmered in response to her turmoil, the emotion she'd tried so hard to suppress now rising like a tide. Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll figure this out," he said, though uncertainty shadowed his eyes. Nira nodded, but her gaze lingered on the comms relay, on the signal she could not ignore, and the choice that waited just beyond the mist. A storm battered the cottage, rain lashing the roof in relentless sheets. Wind clawed at the shutters, rattling the windows with every furious gust. Inside, Nira crouched over the rickety table, her slender fingers moving with urgent precision as she reassembled the comms array. Tools and fractured crystals lay scattered across faded blueprints. The hum of the storm outside echoed the tension building within the cramped room. Ethan hovered nearby, silent until the kettle's whistle pierced the thunder. He poured her a mug of tea, the warmth steaming in the chill air. "You should rest," he said quietly, setting the mug beside her. "You haven't slept since this morning." Nira did not look up. Her gaze stayed fixed on the glowing mesh of the relay, her hands steady despite the quiver in her voice. "There isn't time. They'll be here in less than 2 days." She felt his eyes on her, searching for something she could not give. He crossed his arms, leaning against the counter. "So that's it. Your rescue comes, and you're just gone." Lightning flashed, illuminating the worry etched in his features. The air felt thick, pressing them together and holding them apart at once. Nira set the final crystal in place, the array humming to life with a blue pulse. "They'll extract me," she said, voice low. "Then everything returns to how it was." She risked a glance at Ethan. He looked away, jaw clenched. She activated the comms. Her tone shifted, formal and clipped. "Scout Echo to Lurian Command. Extraction coordinates secured, awaiting confirmation." Static crackled, then a measured voice replied, "Extraction in 36 hours. Hold position. Remain covert." Nira ended the transmission and sagged back, fatigue catching up with her. Ethan stepped closer, his expression torn between anger and sadness. Why won't you tell me what really happened? Why you crashed? Why you're so afraid? She hesitated. Because you deserve the truth, she admitted, voice trembling. The crash wasn't just an accident. It was orchestrated. My assignment was to simulate vulnerability, to see how humans would respond to someone obviously not one of their own. She looked up, guilt swimming in her eyes. You were never supposed to know I was here. No one was. Ethan's breath caught. So, I was part of a test? You were never meant to be involved, Ethan. I thought I could disappear without leaving a trace. Instead, she broke off, unable to finish. He stepped forward, pain and understanding mingling in his gaze. You could have told me sooner. Before she could answer, a new light flared outside, white, blinding, cutting through the rain. Floodlights swept the forest, painting the trees in ghostly silhouettes. The distant rumble of engines drew closer, headlights carving through the storm. Ethan's face blanched. Military. Nira leapt to her feet as vehicles skidded to a halt outside. Boots pounded on the porch. The door burst inward, splinters flying. Armed men in tactical gear surged through, weapons raised. The lead figure was a woman in a crisp, rain-slicked coat, Director Hayes of the Extraterrestrial Response Unit, her expression cold and controlled. Stand down, Hayes barked. Both of you, hands visible. Ethan moved in front of Nira instinctively. She's not a threat. Hayes ignored him, eyes fixed on Nira's glowing markings. We've been tracking Lurian signatures for months. Earth's leaders have always suspected the Assembly's presence. Did you really think you'd go unnoticed? Soldiers separated them with practiced force. Ethan tried to reach for Nira, but she was already being pulled away, her last words a desperate whisper. I'm sorry, Ethan. He watched helplessly as she was marched out into the storm, her form shrinking against the glare of the floodlights. Nira was brought to a sterile interrogation chamber, a room of blank white walls and mirrored glass. They left her in silence, the hum of the fluorescent lights loud in the emptiness. She steadied her breathing, the pulse of her markings growing faint with anxiety. After what felt like an eternity, the door slid open. Commander Sileth entered, not as a prisoner, but with the quiet authority of an equal. His uniform shimmered with the insignia of the Lurian Assembly, and his eyes held an emotion Nira rarely saw among her own, understanding. Sit, Nira, he said gently. She obeyed, her hands folded in her lap. You're not a captive? Sileth shook his head. Director Hayes and I have been negotiating for hours. We are not enemies here, not unless we choose to be. He sat opposite her, his gaze searching. Your mission, do you understand its true purpose now? Nira hesitated. To observe, to evaluate the threat Earth poses. He shook his head again, more softly. No, you were chosen for your empathy, Nira, for your ability to see beyond protocol, beyond fear. This was never just about them. It was about you, about whether you could forge trust, even when trust seemed impossible. Her composure cracked. I failed. I let them find me. I let Ethan... Feelings are not failure, Sileth said, voice firm. They are proof you are precisely who we hoped you'd become. Meanwhile, Ethan was brought to a stark conference room in the main compound. Hayes sat across from him, folders stacked at her elbow. She studied him, her tone brisk. You've proven yourself unusually adaptable. We'd like you to serve as liaison to the Assembly. To build something better. He shook his head, frustration raw. Not until I see Nira. I have questions. I need answers. Hayes pursed her lips, but after a moment's hesitation nodded. 5 minutes, then you decide. The door opened, and Ethan found himself in another bare room, Nira waiting, her hands folded and her eyes meeting his. She had removed the cloth from her arms, letting the swirling violet markings pulse freely in the sterile light, a gesture of Lurian trust. He crossed to her in 3 steps, searching her face. Was it ever real? Any of it? Nira's breath trembled. I regret nothing except the secrets I kept from you. I wasn't supposed to feel anything for you, but I did. I do. My markings. She lifted her arm, the patterns glowing bright. They don't lie. Ethan reached for her hand, his thumb tracing the vibrant lines. I don't want this to end here. Not with everything unsaid. Her eyes shone, hope and sorrow warring within them. Do you think we could work together, humans and Lurians? He smiled, the weight of the world in his gaze. I think maybe it always depended on us. Before she could answer, the door slid open. Commander Sileth entered, followed by Director Hayes. Both leaders appraised Ethan and Nira, expectation heavy in the air. Mr. Calloway, Hayes said, we need your answer. Ethan's grip on Nira's hand tightened. He looked to her, the question clear in his eyes. Trust, risk, the possibility of something entirely new. Maybe it always depended on us, he said again, his words carrying the hope of 2 worlds. 3 days later, the world had changed. Earth hung below them, a swirling blue marble veiled in cloud, as the Lurian envoy ship drifted in silent orbit. Inside, Nira and Ethan stood shoulder to shoulder in the soft glow of the corridor lights, the viewports along the wall framing the planet they both now called home in different ways. Nira wore the pale, iridescent uniform of a Lurian cultural liaison, her swirling violet markings bright against luminous blue skin. Beside her, Ethan's suit was a simple dark cut, almost austere against the ship's organic curves. Yet somehow, he belonged here as much as she did. Their assigned quarters were adjacent, close enough for the silent current between them to hum with every step and every glance. Proximity was no longer a simple matter of logistics. It was a comfort neither of them was quite ready to name. Nira adjusted the silver clasp at her collar, her hands steady, even as her eyes betrayed a flicker of nerves. The council is not like your governments, she said, voice low. Most of them distrust humanity's volatility. Some believe you're too unpredictable to risk an alliance. Ethan watched the stars wheel past the viewport, his expression thoughtful. And what do you believe, Nira? She hesitated, searching his face for something she couldn't define. The chime of a summons interrupted, echoing through the corridor like a ripple in water. It's time, Ethan said, offering his arm. She took it, and together they walked the curved hall toward the council chamber. The chamber itself was vast and luminous, walls alive with shifting light and color. Counselors stood in a semicircle, robed in shimmering fabrics that reflected their unique markings, an array of purples, blues, and silvers. At the center, Counselor Vera's gaze was cool and measuring, her eyes flicking over Ethan with clinical interest. Ethan straightened, letting his practiced calm settle in. Thank you for receiving us. Counselor Vera's voice rang out, layered with authority. Human, you are aware that the Assembly has long observed your world. We have seen violence, division, environmental devastation. Why should we trust your kind with knowledge of the greater cosmos? Nira watched, her heart thudding, as Ethan met the council's gaze without flinching. Because we are more than our worst moments, he said. Yes, we've made mistakes, we're flawed, but we're capable of compassion, innovation, hope. My people dream of reaching beyond what we are, not just for conquest, but for understanding. I don't pretend we're perfect, but we want to be better. That's all any of us can offer. A murmur rippled through the counselors. Nira stood taller beside him, the brightness of her markings betraying her admiration. She had seen his candor before, but never with such stakes. Counselor Vera leaned forward. Words are not enough. There must be a test of compatibility, of trust. We propose a neural resonance, a temporary bond between minds. If your species is truly capable of harmony with ours, it will be proven here. Nira stiffened, stunned. That ritual is reserved for bonded pairs. It requires complete vulnerability, shared memories, unfiltered thoughts. It's never been attempted with a human. Vera's eyes narrowed. Then let this be the ultimate test, if you both consent. Ethan turned to Nira, his hand gentle on her arm. If you're not ready, she shook her head, searching his gaze. Do you trust me, Ethan? He smiled, soft and certain. Do you trust me, Nira? The answer lay between them, unspoken but sure. She nodded. They followed a pair of technicians into the resonance chamber, a circular room bathed in soft blue light. Lurian neural nodes rested on a crystalline table, pulsing in time with the ship's heartbeat. The technicians worked quickly, affixing the delicate nodes to Nira's temples, then to Ethan's brow and the base of his skull. Cold tingled against his skin, but her presence steadied him. Focus on each other, a technician murmured. Let your thoughts flow. The process will begin gently. Nira's eyes met Ethan's, and in that moment, the world outside the chamber faded away. The neural array flickered, and suddenly Ethan felt her in his mind, a presence both familiar and impossibly vast. Nira's mental voice echoed, melodic, full of starlight and wonder. You hear me? I hear you, Ethan replied, astonished at how easily the words formed in thought alone. Surface impressions bled together. Nira's memories of starlit corridors, the icy solitude of her youth, the pressure to be perfect, to hide emotion for the sake of protocol. Ethan's own memories surfaced, late nights spent negotiating impossible peace, the faces of those he could not save, the ache of being always on the outside, even among his own. You're lonely, Nira thought, surprise coloring her tone. So are you, he replied, gentle. But you never let it show. The resonance deepened. Emotions flowed. Nira's awe at Earth's wildness, Ethan's grief and hope, their fear and exhilaration when they first touched hands in the wreckage, the warmth that had grown between them, fragile and insistent. Images flickered, shared meals, laughter in the cottage, the storm raging as they confessed their truths. Then the connection plunged deeper. Memories gave way to core truths, Nira's longing for connection, her terror of being truly seen and then rejected. Ethan's hope that peace was possible, not just between worlds but within himself. There was no hiding here, no barriers left. Their hands met, fingers entwining, blue light sparking between their palms and leaping across the chamber. Alarms blared suddenly, panicked voices outside, warning that the resonance was exceeding safe limits. The technicians shouted, but neither Ethan nor Nira moved to break the link. They held on, breath mingling, the neural array blazing with shared emotion. I see you, Ethan thought, fierce and clear. All of you. And I you, Nira replied, her mental voice trembling with joy and terror. Outside the glass, the counselors pressed forward, awe etched on every face. Counselor Vera's voice rose above the commotion, her composure shaken. This is a true harmonic bond. It was only a theory until now. The blue light flooded the room, swirling around Ethan and Nira, illuminating them in a shared halo that neither world had ever witnessed. The alarms shrieked, but for a few endless heartbeats, there was only the two of them, joined not by accident, but by choice. And as the resonance gently subsided, the bond between them remained, unbroken and undeniable, a living bridge between two worlds. The Lurian ship erupted in commotion before the neural resonance had even faded from Nira and Ethan's minds. Voices ricocheted through crystalline corridors, footfalls hurried and anxious, alarms pulsing in the background. On the command deck, systems blazed with warning glyphs and frantic alerts. Earth's militaries had detected the energy spike, satellites tracking the surge with mounting dread. Nira and Ethan sat side by side on observation beds, medical sensors trailing from their temples and wrists. The isolation bay was awash in sterile blue light, but they felt far from alone. A tide of fear pressed against the bulkheads, radiating from both worlds. Lurian officers worried about contamination, human analysts on Earth bracing for aggression, everyone caught in the undertow of the unknown. Nira pressed her palm to the glass, the swirling marks on her skin bright with anxious energy. "They're scared," she murmured, her words echoing in the silence between them. Ethan nodded, his hand finding hers. "They don't understand what happened. They think we're a threat." A medic entered, eyes wide, voice trembling. "The Council is in emergency session. Director Hayes is demanding answers. Earth's military has gone to high alert. Missile silos have opened. The Council is preparing to deploy containment fields." Nira sat up, urgency in her voice. "You have to let us speak to them. We can stop this." The medic hesitated. "You're not cleared." Ethan fixed the man with a steady, diplomatic gaze. "We're the only ones who can explain this. Please, take us to the command deck." The medic's resolve faltered, then broke. He nodded and hurried away to call for security. Moments later, a pair of guards arrived, escorting Nira and Ethan through corridors filled with tense, whispering crew. News of the harmonic bond had spread faster than light. Some faces showed awe, others open fear. The command deck was a storm of activity. Lurian officers shouted across holographic displays. Earth's generals appeared as angry projections. Commander Sileth stood at the center, face drawn but composed. Director Hayes's image hovered beside him, her jaw tight, eyes dark with suspicion. Sileth turned as Nira and Ethan entered, voice sharp. "You should be in isolation." Hayes cut in. "Earth sensors recorded a spike in gravitic resonance. My superiors want answers before someone does something irreversible." Nira stepped forward, Ethan beside her. "We can answer, but you have to trust us. We're not a threat. Our connection, our bond, proves that harmony is possible." Sileth's eyes narrowed. "It is also unprecedented. No Lurian has ever—" Ethan interrupted, confidence clear in his tone. "Which is why we must act now. You both want peace, but fear is blinding everyone. Let us show you." He reached for the nearest console, hands moving instinctively. Nira joined him, her fingers gliding over Lurian glyphs. The neural resonance had changed them. Ethan could read Lurian systems as if they were extensions of his own thoughts. Nira interfaced seamlessly with the human security protocols pouring in from Earth. Together they overrode the firewalls, opening a secure channel to both worlds. Across the ship and through every military command center on Earth, screens flickered to life, broadcasting their image and voice. Nira lifted her chin, her markings glowing with determined light. "This is Nira of the Lurian Assembly. I speak with Ethan Calloway, human liaison. We speak as one." Ethan took her hand, his voice steady. "We know you're afraid. Both our peoples are. But what happened here, our bond, was not an act of aggression. It was a choice. Proof that we can understand each other, even at our most vulnerable." Nira's eyes met the camera. "I opened my mind to Ethan. He opened his to me. There is risk in vulnerability, but also hope. We will not let fear define our future." For a long moment, silence answered them. Then, one by one, weapons systems on both sides powered down. Lurian containment fields receded. On Earth, generals conferred quietly, then gave the order, "Stand down." The tension that had threatened to shatter everything slowly ebbed, replaced by something fragile and new. 6 months later, the world had reshaped itself in the wake of that broadcast. The new Earth Lurian embassy rose on a windswept bluff above the Pacific, its architecture a marriage of glass and living crystal, luminous in the sunset. Trade and dialogue flourished, cautious at first, then bolder, emboldened by the example of two souls who had chosen trust over fear. Nira stood on the embassy balcony, her gaze sweeping the endless horizon. The swirling marks on her arms shimmered in the golden light. Ethan joined her, hands in his pockets, a contented smile softening his features. "You can see forever from here," he said, voice warm. "The world feels bigger than it ever did before." Nira nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "It is. For the first time, I'm allowed to choose where I belong." She glanced at him, her face open and vulnerable in the fading sun. "The council has nominated me as Sileth's successor, but they want me to return to Luria." He touched her arm gently. "And what do you want?" She hesitated, searching his face. "I want to stay. Here. With you." Her words carried all the weight of a life spent denying her own desires, now set free. Their bond had not faded. Some still questioned it, called it dangerous, even unnatural. But for many, it had become a symbol. Hope that two worlds could trust, could change, could build something neither could imagine alone. Ethan leaned against the railing beside her, their shoulders touching. "After everything," he said softly, "I can't imagine life without you. Not here, not anywhere." Nira's response was wordless. She turned to him and pressed her forehead gently to his, the oldest Lurian gesture of intimacy, a promise of trust, of shared spirit. Her markings glowed brighter, and she saw her own reflection in Ethan's eyes, mirrored there with all his warmth and wonder. He cupped her cheek, and she leaned into his touch. Their lips met in a kiss, soft, lingering, filled with the energy of their connection. In the golden dusk, the swirling marks on both their skins glowed in perfect harmony, pulsing with the memory of that first resonance, now made real in the world they were building together. Night fell, stars blooming overhead. Nira and Ethan stood at the edge of the world, hand in hand, united against the vast unknown. Their bond, unexpected, extraordinary, had changed not just their lives, but the fate of two civilizations, shining as a beacon for all who would follow. This brings our story to a close. Don't forget to hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. Our team will truly appreciate your support. There are plenty more exciting stories waiting for you on our channel. See you in the next video.